and welcome to everyone who's watching us live, and to those of you catching up on YouTube. It's lovely to have you here. My name is Dr. Katherine Lloyd and my pronouns are she, her. For anyone who needs a visual description, I am a white woman with long dark hair, and today I am wearing a black jumpsuit. I am convener for postgraduate taught programs in Information Studies, and I'm also the program convener for Museum Studies. You'll have just seen our introductory video, which highlights some of our wonderful work here at the University of Glasgow, including a peek into some of our museum stores, our archives and special collections. And we're really looking forward to welcoming you all to Glasgow, to the campus in September. Today, we've got an opportunity to have a question and answer session with some of our program conveners and our students, and I'm very pleased that everyone's here to join us today. So I'd like to hand over to my colleagues now and our wonderful students to introduce themselves, and in no particular order, I'll begin with Dr. Adele Redhead.
Hi there, thanks very much. I'm Adele Redhead. I'm the convener for the Information Management and Preservation MSc and Postgraduate Diploma. For those of you who maybe can't see me very easily, I'm a white woman wearing glasses. I have far too many greys in my hair, but I'd like to think it was brown. I'm wearing a stripy blouse and a black cardigan.
Thank you, Adele. David.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr David McMenemy and I'm convener for the new Library and Information Studies degree that's launching in October. My pronouns are he and him. And for visual description, I'm a white man with increasingly greying hair, but actually it did start off as brown. And today I'm wearing a navy blue shirt.
The wisdom of my Information Studies colleagues in their hair. Emily, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Hi, my name is Emily. My pronouns are she, her. For anyone who can't see me, I am a white woman with light hair and I'm wearing a blue jumper today.
Thank you, Emily. And Roxanne.
Hi, I'm Roxanne. I am a female Museum Studies student. I have light skin and long dark hair, and I'm wearing a black shirt. Oh, and my pronouns are she, her.
Fabulous. Thank you all so much for joining us today. I know that we have a wealth of expertise here in the virtual room, and we're here now to start beginning to answer your questions. And so you can do that by putting your question into the chat, and we'll kind of pick them out as we see them and begin to ask some of these questions. So we've already got questions coming in. We've got questions around some of the technical kind of induction elements of the program. And our first question actually relates to a very particular thing, which I actually can't answer, which is access to Glasgow Essentials and Moodle. And I wonder if some of our backstage team could help out with some links on that, please, just to provide people with some of the technical supports that our university colleagues provide elsewhere for the subject. Whilst we are waiting for further questions to come in, I wonder if we could just start off with throwing things over to our wonderful students and speaking a little bit about the experience of being a postgraduate student here in Information Studies. Emily and Roxanne, what are your top tips for getting the most out of your time here at Glasgow? Emily, would you like to go first?
I can do, yeah. So top tips. So I would say make sure that you attend every single class if possible, because that is the most important part. And I know sometimes it doesn't seem like you want to go to a 5 o'clock dissertation class, but it is really important to kind of get the most out of it. And I would say, you know, talk to your peers, ask people questions. Everyone's in the same boat. So, you know, no one, people you think might think people know more than you know, but everyone is kind of on the same level. So it's important to just remember that and not be afraid to ask questions and, you know, ask for help if you need it with anything.
Thanks, Emily. And we've got two of my fellow colleagues are here today, but we have a very supportive staff team here in Information Studies who are all ready to help you and support you in your career. Our staff are academic experts, but they're also professional experts as well, with a wealth of experience either in the sector or working with sector partners in the university. And we're really well placed to kind of help students through and begin to think about career planning and how to kind of map out the studies against things, but also some of the pastoral elements as well that students need help with. So yes, I'd reinforce that message of reaching out to people. Roxanne, what about yourself? How might students best prepare for coming to Glasgow?
Yeah, well, in a class with one of the conveners of Museum Studies, Lynn, she likes to say, you get what you put in. And I think that's definitely true. Just showing up, like Emily said, reading as much as you can. There's a lot of reading, but even if you just come back to it and refresh yourself with the readings, start using programs like Zotero right away to stay organized and just, yeah, build connections, network, volunteer, and talk to people, especially if you're confused, because everybody is kind of probably going to be confused too.
That's some very good advice. Thank you. Okay, so we've got some questions beginning to come in, and we've got a question related to our CILIP accreditation. And I'm wondering, David, would you be able to answer this for us, please?
Yep. So the question says, during the last orientation, it was mentioned that the library studies degree started at CILIP accreditation. How long does that process typically take? Basically, the whole department is going through CILIP accreditation this year, so the library degree is getting added to that. In terms of a new degree, what normally happens is there's no provisional accreditation. Basically, it becomes accredited after it's delivered, because they obviously can't accredit a degree until it's been fully delivered and students are happy and all the paperwork's there. So basically, I'm not sure if you've been sent a letter, Di, but you should have got a letter which confirms CILIP's end of the process. So basically, technically the way it would work is your course will be accredited if you do it in year one, but it won't be accredited until it's completed, if that makes sense. That's roughly the way it works. So, and obviously we are very confident we'll get CILIP accreditation for it because we've done this lots of times. We're all very kind of well connected with CILIP. I'm a fellow and I'm CILIP's president this year. So we know what we're doing in that regard, but obviously it's not in our gift, it's in CILIP's gift, but we're very confident we'll get that. And CILIP work with us to do that. So, but in year one of any degree, basically, it's a transitional process and it comes once it's completed. So you will be CILIP accredited if we get the accreditation, which we're confident we'll get, but it won't be immediate when you begin the course, it'll be when you finish, if that makes sense. So we can provide you with any letters you need to confirm that for employers, etc. And that's something it's pretty standard in the field for new courses.
And David, you mentioned that you are president of CILIP. Would you mind explaining who CILIP are and what that accreditation process is?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, Kat, thank you. So CILIP is basically the professional body for librarians and information professionals in the UK. So I'm president of CILIPS, which is the Scottish branch this year. So I had to host the conference and kind of wear a medal and things. It's quite fun. But basically, the accreditation that CILIP provides, they accredit all of the library degrees and information degrees in the UK. But by virtue of a reciprocal accreditation with the American Library Association, it basically means that if you get CILIP accreditation, you're able to take that degree and practice in the US, and vice versa. Obviously, American librarians can practice in the UK. So that's why it's very important, and we're aware it's important. So don't think it's not going to be done. It's something that we are doing. But obviously, the timetable is CILIP's timetable. It's not our timetable. We work with them, and they work with us. I should actually point out, I've noted quite a few people in the chat who are from the USA. I don't know if any of you are going to the American Library Association conference, but we will be there from Friday. So I'm going along with my colleague, Tim Duguid. So if you are planning on attending the ALA conference to visit the exhibition, which I know a lot of students do, to see information and library skills, come along and get some freebies. We've got pens and pencils and things. And bookmarks, librarians love bookmarks. So please come along and speak to us if you are around Philadelphia over the next 4 or 5 days. Sorry, Kat, that was an extra.
No, I love that. Thank you, David. And so SILIP also accredit our Museum Studies program and our Information Management and Preservation program. Just whilst we're on that, Adele, do you want to speak about our accreditation? And we've also got a question in the chat related to this. Someone asking, will they be qualified to work in an archive after completing this course? Anna, I'm assuming that you are registered on the Information Management and Preservation program rather than the library program.
Yeah, so thanks for that, Kat. Yeah, so all of the degrees offered within Information Studies, with the exception of the new degree of Library Studies, are currently accredited by SILIP, where, as David said, we're hopeful that the Library and Information Studies degree will become accredited by SILIP in due course. The IMP programme, Information Management Preservation, is also accredited by ARA, which is the Archives and Records Association of the UK and Ireland. We've timed this really badly. It's just the way it works. But the reaccreditation for SILIP is happening in the next year. The reaccreditation for ARA will be happening in the next year as well. And so we'll be undergoing the reaccreditation for both of them within the same few months. We have been accredited, the IMP programme has been accredited by both of these bodies for most of the last 20 years that the programme has been running. So we've had to undergo reaccreditation several times. So this isn't something that we're worried about. It's actually a really positive process. And it's great having the dual accreditation for information management and preservation, because this does mean that our graduates go off and they work in archives, in libraries, in digital archives, all sorts of different roles. So if you're interested in becoming an archivist, then the Archives and Records Association accreditation is what's really important there.
Thanks, Adele. And just so that we tie up all these questions as precisely as we can, we've had a question around whether whether or not the ALA is equivalent, I'm going to skip words, in Canada and other nations as well. David?
Yeah, no, that's an excellent question, May. Thank you for asking that. The answer is yes. Basically, to my knowledge, we get a lot of Canadian students, and I've taught a lot over the years, but to my knowledge, in Canada, it's ALA accredited programs again that essentially employers look for. So it would be the same thing. But the reciprocal accreditation works in North America, it works in Ireland, it works in Australia and New Zealand. So it's a global qualification. In actual fact, SILIP accreditation is sought by other countries as well. So there's actually quite a few countries in the Middle East and Far East who actually have gone for SILIP accreditation for their degrees. So it's a universally recognised qualification, but the specific agreements between ALA, SILIP, LIANZA, etc. are the ones that you can guarantee will qualify you to work in those countries. So I used to work at another university, which I won't name, we're teaching a librarianship degree there. I had a lot of American students who basically qualified under that degree and went back to practice in the US. So it's pretty standard stuff, and we know how to write your letters, etc. to support that if you've got any doubts.
Thank you, David. Okay, I think we've addressed accreditation questions in the chat. I'm just moving through.
Oh, yes. Sorry, but just one thing about the spelling. I think someone is asking about the spelling of SILIP. So it's CILIP, Library and Information Professionals.
Yes, it stands for the Chartered Institute of Library and Information Professionals. So it's in the UK we have chartered bodies, which basically means that they're allowed to accredit usually professions, and it's awarded by the Crown. So basically, in SILIP HQ, they've got a big kind of legal document signed by the Queen Elizabeth, and before that, when it was a library association, it gives the professional body certain privileges in terms of negotiating with government, etc., but also licensing professionals. So it's a very well respected stamp of approval on courses.
And we are very privileged in Information Studies to have David as a representative from it as well. Excellent. Okay, so I think we've addressed our accreditation courses. Please do correct me, colleagues, if you see additional questions appearing in the chat. So we have some questions related to kind of routes into the degree, whether or not people have usually undertaken trainee roles before they come to the degree, whether they've come straight from the undergraduate programs. Before we turn to our staff, Emily and Roxanne, what sort of experience did you have coming into these programs? Roxanne, would you like to begin?
Sure. I did not have a related undergrad degree, but I kind of came through a strange roundabout way. I did do a lot of volunteering beforehand. My small town in the US does not have a lot of museums, so options were limited. But even if you don't have a ton of experience or have never worked in a museum before, this program is still fine. You will still be on the same level as everybody else.
Thanks, Roxanne. And what about yourself, Emily? Did you have much experience working in archives before you began your degree?
No, I didn't really. So my undergrad degree was also not related. It was just an arts degree. And then I was kind of just working once I finished my undergraduate degree, doing a few different odd jobs. And it was actually when I was working in a school that I got into working in archives, because the school was very old and they had a huge archive. And I was able to volunteer with the librarian/archivist in there. And that was kind of how I got into it. So I would say my experience, it was not that much. Like, I had very little, but it definitely helped to provide like a basis. I think that's important to kind of know what you're getting into, not necessarily to have the knowledge, but just to know, you know, what you're signing up for and what the actual work will be. So yeah, I don't think you need much experience, but I think it's important to just check it's something you're actually interested in before you commit to the course, because it's a lot of work and it's a lot of money as well. So just to bear in mind.
If you want, I can speak to the graduate traineeship thing, if that's handy, Kat. There's not a straightforward answer to that. Quite a lot of prospective students on degrees like ours take up those opportunities because they can be useful, but you don't actually need to do it. So graduate traineeships and librarianship, there used to be more, I can't speak for archives, maybe Adele can, but there used to be many more of them in the UK than there are now. And it used to be a traditional route that a lot of people took into the traditional library schools. Absolutely useful experience. You get paid if you can get one of those, but you don't need it. So a little bit of experience is enough to get on our degrees. But if you do get that kind of opportunity and want to take it up, by all means do so. It certainly would look good on your CV and you get a lot of good experience. Don't know what Adele thinks.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. It used to be much more common, but there are far fewer of these traineeships around, which is a real shame for all sorts of different reasons. But I think the very best students are students who have really thought about what it is that they've done, even if it hasn't necessarily seemed related at the start. So it's about that working in the clothes shop, but thinking about the way the displays fit together and how can that translate to a museum. How do the records come through the tills? How do the records work with the ordering of new stock and when stock is sold, or if there's a stock take? It's all of those individual different pieces about thinking about information and the way that we use information and the way that relates to objects. So it's not even that you have to have had a specific length of time within a traditional repository. Actually, the best students are able to see a bit more inventively, you know, the working in the school, the working in the doctor's surgery, the working in the clothes shop. So we have exactly the same experience in archives and records management about these traineeships. Just it's great if they're there, but if they're not, if you don't have that, then that's fine. Another thing I think people also, can sometimes feel a bit at sea, like I should have done a history degree, and lots of people haven't done history degrees in this field, and the classroom is all the better for having people with diversity of experience, whether that's work experience or their first degree experience.
And I think this speaks to the wider student body in information studies as a whole. We have people at all different kind of career stages, life experience changes, different kinds of backgrounds. And it's what makes our classrooms such rich learning environments that we can learn from one another. We have people who've already worked in cultural institutions and are trying to kind of move in a different direction. We have people with different career paths entirely who are converting. And we do a lot of work throughout our degree programs to think about mapping these existing skills and building on expertise and thinking about where we want to take things. We also build in work-related learning across our programs, and we do this in different ways. Sometimes we're talking about placements, sometimes we're thinking about, you may have a professional coming into the classroom to speak with you about practice. We try to expose you to working environments requirements and working practices as much as we can, even in our taught classrooms. And so we've had some questions related to this in the chat around placements. Roxanne, I know that you did a placement on the Museum Studies program. Would you like to speak to that?
I did. I can't say enough about how wonderful my placement was. So I worked at the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Glasgow for my second semester, and I actually got the opportunity to curate my own small display. It was super hands-on. All of the theory and things that we had been learning, I got to see how it applied in a real situation. It's a small institution, so I really got to know my supervisors, and yeah, and I'm actually volunteering there right now still. So I just have talked to my supervisors about what I think would be best for my own education, and they are providing me with opportunities to do things that I didn't get to do on my placement, like more collections management things. So it's really, if you get an opportunity to do a work placement, I highly recommend it. You'll build great connections and learn a lot.
Thanks, Roxanne. And we offer different kinds of placements within information studies. Hopefully, most of you will have now received your welcome pack, which gives an overview of your curriculum for the coming year and gives you kind of the different options across the different programs. So within Museum Studies, we have the choice of an individual work placement, which is what Roxanne was just describing. But we also have 2 courses that we offer where students work as a group collectively with a cultural partner to deliver a real world project. So our exhibition students recently completed the install of their exhibition in the Hunterian Art Gallery. And I wonder if one of my backstage colleagues would mind putting up the link to the Hunterian exhibition program so people can see the online webpage of that. And we also have our learning and engagement with cultural heritage course, which is open to all of our information studies students. And this gives a chance for students across our programs to work and work with Glasgow museums, the Hunterian and the National Library of Scotland to develop practice relating to audience engagement, working with different publics, working with different collections and thinking about different ways that we can engage people, which is what we're all about, weirdly, in information studies, engaging people with our wonderful collections here in Glasgow. Adele and Redhead, Adele, Redhead and David, the placements work slightly differently in information studies. Would you like to speak to the description, cataloguing and navigation placements?
Yeah, so students have a virtual placement as part of description, cataloguing and navigation, which is a course which is shared across Information Management Preservation and will be shared across Library and Information Studies. And we're able as well this year to be able to bring back, for the first time since COVID, the choice of having either a virtual placement where students were working quite closely with the University of Glasgow Archives and Special Collections, but there will be some in-person placements available as part of that as well, and that they will also be dovetailed into the potential placements, which has always been there apart from the COVID years where things were so closed down, of having a dissertation which is more placement based, so based within a real repository. So lots of students do choose that choice as well.
Yeah, and in terms of the library degree, that is part of Adele's course, the description, cataloguing and navigation. So we are putting our call out for placement volunteers. It's a tricky one in year 1 because we don't want to get too many offers if we only have a certain number of students in the first year. So it's trying to balance that. But one of the things, again, I'm used to doing placements at my previous institution, so it's pretty standard stuff. But when you arrive, I'll try and understand what it is you want. So if you can let me know what your interests are, I will try and match you up with a provider. But all of our placements, as Adele was saying, have a cataloguing and classification component to them. So it's very practical, and all of our providers will be told that. So the idea you'll be doing something that you can actually point to that's tangible, that you can say, you know, I worked in that collection, or I worked in that library, kind of, you know, cataloguing or classifying materials. So that's a really important part of it for us.
Fabulous. Okay, so we have some more specific questions coming in. I'll take these in kind of order of ease for answering, I think. So we've got a question around individual staff advisors. So all postgraduate students, your advisor is your program convener. For any museum studies students, that's myself. For David, you are your libraries and information studies students, and Adele is the advisor for information management and preservation students. And we have office hours throughout the year. We have bookable appointments that you can either do online or in person, depending on everyone's preferences. And so you can come and chat to us about your assessments, career ideas, all of these sorts of things. But we're just one part of the advising system. We've actually got a fantastic support system here in information studies and the wider College of Arts to provide you with connections of all the sorts of different things that Glasgow students need help with. So our wellbeing colleagues who will advise you on things like counselling services. We have our careers service. We have people who can help out if you're experiencing financial difficulties, which is something that we've helped students with recently in recent years. We have a fantastic support system here in information studies. Our colleague Amy Johnson will often get in touch with students that we know something about your background before you come in, and so she'll proactively reach out to you and ask if there's anything else that we can do to help you during your year. But all staff members in information studies, and it's such a privilege to be able to say this, all staff members in information studies really care about our students, and you can speak to any one of us about anything. But we have these other formal channels as well. So really, really proud about what we're able to do in terms of offering student support. We've got some practical questions around when we teach and what hours of the day we teach and all of these sorts of things, which I know if you're planning work commitments, if you're planning childcare, all of these sorts of things, I know this is really important. In the welcome pack, which we've sent out to office holders, we've given as much information as we can about the days of the week that you will be teaching. It varies across the 3 programs, so it's a bit difficult to kind of give you a synopsis here verbally, but we don't teach Fridays. I can tell you that categorically in information studies. And I'm going to put my program conveners on the spot here. In museum studies in semester 1, we teach on a Monday, Wednesday, and a Thursday. Are either of you, David or Adele, ready to say which days you speak? Adele?
Yeah, it's normally Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, but we've swapped one course from semester 1 to semester 2 and vice versa. So usually the timetabling works. We have a reasonable expectation that it will just roll over, not the same rooms, but at least the times, because we've swapped it around. I'm a bit more reluctant to commit, but I'm hopeful. It's all couched in quite careful language, but I'm hopeful it'll be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in semester 1 again.
Yeah, I think the library degree's the same, definitely Monday, Tuesday, I think Wednesday. Obviously semester 2 will vary slightly because that will be based on which elective you choose, and that's obviously, you know, spread throughout the timetable because we have lots of electives going on. But yeah, the core I'm pretty sure is Monday, definitely Monday, Tuesday, and I think Wednesday. Is it Thursday?
I've just managed to find the right information whilst I was multitasking there. So it's Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday. What we can't do very succinctly is tell you exact times that we teach, because it does vary across the programs. We try to avoid the bookends at either end of the day, but I don't think every course and every seminar group fits into those. So we will have that information for you at enrolment. So in August, when you enroll, all of your course catalogues will say the precise timings of all of our classes. Unfortunately, we can't share that information any earlier than that, just because there are timetabling changes outside of our control. On that, within the Welcome Week, we have a program of activities that are happening from the 15th of September, which we're really excited about. Monday is locked in. It's our first day that we will meet with all students. We will have a reception in the evening in the Hunterian Museum with wine, if that's your thing, which is always a really, really lovely event. And then during the week, we'll also have opportunities to meet with some of our sector representatives, to see some of our collections facilities, and to get a little taste of the sorts of teaching that we do and get to know one another. Because there are so many moving parts, some of the days and times of that are still being negotiated. It's quite a challenge to negotiate between accessing different museums and libraries and coordinating with everyone's schedules. So we will get all of that information finalized within the next couple of weeks, and we'll get that over and put up on our web pages as well as soon as possible. But my colleague Amy Johnson, again, is very busy behind the scenes trying to finalize all of this for you. And it's always a fantastic week where we get to kind of share everything that's exciting and going on in Glasgow and get to meet you as well. Other questions that are coming in. We have a question around how competitive our programs are. So we've obviously got some people in the chat who aren't offer holders but are thinking of putting in an application. Adele, what are the entry requirements for all the programs? Adele is also our Dean of Postgraduate Talk for the whole college, so she is very up on all of our different programs and their entry requirements.
Yeah, so if English is your first language, or you have studied your undergraduate degree in English, then there are no English language requirements. It's worth double checking the English language requirements if you have English as an additional language. Then normally it's a 2-1 first degree, and that's in any subject. I think often it says any related subject, but actually we've had students on our programs with degrees in engineering and maths and education, as well as history and English literature, and the ones that we might immediately think of. And so it's normally a 2-1 degree, but if it's a 2-2, especially if it's a while ago, or if you have significant experience and no first degree, then those cases are looked at on a case-by-case basis by the conveners. So that's us. We have caps on our numbers. So I think the lesson is apply as soon as you can. If you're not sure, you can always apply, get accepted, and then defer. So you're able to defer for a year quite easily, and for a second year, with, again, that's based on programme conveners approval. So just apply and see. Sometimes it's conditional offers. We ask for previous work experience, but we're really flexible in how that is defined and where that might be. And certainly for IMP, but I'd imagine for Museum Studies, for Library and Information Studies, if you want to do some work experience before coming, you don't necessarily need to be able to go into an institution or a repository. We've got a nice list that we started compiling in COVID, and now we update, of virtual work experience opportunities. But it's really worth getting some behind the scenes experience if you can, not least because, as Emily said, it's a big investment in time and in money and in effort to come on one of these programs, and you want to make sure it's for you, it's the right program for you. It's in no one's interest if you're there on the wrong program. So if you can get behind the scenes in a museum or a library or an archive or any other similar setting, then do that, because you'll learn a lot and actually then hopefully be clear in your choice.
And related to choice, we've got a question about the advantage of doing the full master's programme. So at Glasgow, it's an MSc, a Master of Science, is the 1-year master's programme. And essentially that differentiates us from the MA Arts, which is our bachelor's level programme. So what are the advantages of doing the full year as opposed to doing the shorter postgraduate diploma? And Emily raised the subject of fees and costs, and the fastest answer to that is the PG DIP is the shorter programme, and it is substantially cheaper, but there are advantages to doing either. David, would you like to speak to that one?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. Essentially, the PG DIP is accredited by SILUP, so to work professionally in the UK, you would be a qualified librarian or archivist or museum practitioner. It gets slightly more problematic if you come from another country or you want to practice in another country, because the PG DIPs are alien concepts to lots of other countries. So I think if you were planning on perhaps working abroad or wanted that potential advantage to yourself, then you would want to do the MSc. But if you know that you are going to practice in the UK, PG DIP's entirely fine. That qualifies you. and it won't put any barriers in place for you in terms of progression in your career. So really, UK-based PGDIP or Masters. Abroad, you really want the Masters.
If you are interested in PhD study, then we would always recommend taking the MSc, because having that research component gives you that pathway through to PhD. Equally, if you envisage yourself working in a research-intensive institution, so for example, we do a lot of work with the National Library of Scotland, National Museum Scotland, Historic Environment Scotland, the big nationals, so UK nationals, careful, like the V&A and Tate, and a lot of these organisations are research organisations, and so they do value students who have that research element with their master's qualification. That being said, I'm a massive advocate for the PGDIP. For anyone who is, I have done my research kind of background, I'm interested in sector development, that's why I'm here. 9 months, it is the cheaper option, and it is the one that I would recommend to a lot of students. The only thing to be aware of is if you are a Scottish student, it is more difficult to get funding for the shorter programme. It's easier to get funding for the full 1-year programme through SAS. However, if you are a home-based student from the rest of the UK, England, for example, then it is possible to get funding for the PGDIP programme. These are the sorts of things that we can talk you through. There's a point at the end of semester 1 where you have to choose which pathway you're taking, because it affects your semester 2 optional choices, but you do have flexibility to choose between the two and make any differences in fee arrangements at the end of the semester. So hopefully that answers that question. We also have questions around the group sizes for museum studies, but I think this applies to all of us. Within information studies as a whole, we're anticipating between 100 and 120 PGTs overall across our 3 programs. It's a really vibrant space. We've got this wonderful international and home community, which is really fabulous. So museum studies over the past 10 years has fluctuated between 40 and 60 students. I've got all my dashboards of student applicant numbers for this year, but we're never quite sure exactly how many students we'll get, but we're expecting something within that ballpark. And for information management and preservation, expecting again a similar kind of 40 cohort size. Libraries around about 20, it's looking like, David?
Yeah, we're predicted about 20 in year 1, and that'll grow to about the similar numbers to IMP and museum studies in year 2 onwards. So yeah, I guess if you want a smaller number for librarianship degree, do it this year, because it's year 1.
Yeah. But we plan for all class size scenarios, and we've got quite a tight teaching plan, which means that even though some of our classes are larger, we have lots of opportunities for smaller group discussion and smaller seminar groups as well. So that's all planned for, I can assure you. We've got some specific questions around software applications and what would be most useful. Adele, what sort of software are you using on the IMP programme?
Yeah, so don't go buying anything. That's the biggest thing. Don't go buying anything. We would recommend that you use software that is already available. So Roxanne or Emily, I can't remember which one of you it was that mentioned Zotero. So that's a bibliographic management software. So we'd recommend that you do that or use that, or one of the university, one of the ones that's available on the standard student desktop as part of the university. We look at lots of different software. So someone's mentioned collections management software. We wouldn't expect you to have access to any of that, but we do look at how that's applied and how it's used and by who collections management type software is used. And we also look at things like EAD, encoded archival description, which is, so that's then, if you wanted to have a play about with that, it would be using an XML editor. So don't worry, there are no hidden costs with regards to us expecting you to go off and buy specific software. You'll have access to a lot of it, so a whole host of products, just by virtue of being a student here.
Yeah. And also students all are entitled to Office 365. Every student gets access to that. So even like word processing and database software comes as part of your package as a student. So don't buy anything. So.
We've got a question specifically around access to science collections, and I noticed the question came in from an IMP student, but I'm actually going to throw this over to Roxanne as a Museum Studies student, because I know this was a real area of specialism for you this year.
Yes, I kind of, I guess, specialized in the science collections, and there was a class offered this year that is not going to be offered next year, which was my favorite. However, if you are interested in science collections, Dr. Nikki Reeves, who taught curating the sciences and is the curator for the Hunterian Science Collection, is doing the exhibition development course. So I highly recommend learning from Nikki if you are interested in science collections.
And I would second that. So I'm going to be working on the exhibition development course with Nikki. And although we're going to be exhibiting in the art gallery, we're taking a cross-collection approach. We're going to be looking at collections related to the birthday of the university. It's a big one. And we'll be thinking about working with science collections in there. We will be working with our collections management specialist at the Hunterian, Lizzie O'Neill, who is an expert on emu. So there are plenty of opportunities for that. I did note that that particular student question came in from someone on the IMP program, though, so it's maybe worth having a conversation outside of this chat about whether or not you're on the right program. So we can maybe follow up Adele and myself on that and find a little bit more about your career aspirations there and if we've got you on the right program. On that, we've got a question for David relating to how the library programme would prepare you for an academic librarianship or special collections role.
Yeah, no, excellent question. We've designed the programme to cover special collections very specifically. It's one of our strengths at Glasgow and in Information Studies. So there's a course called Special Collections and Digital Scholarship, which is going to be taught by our wonderful colleague, Professor Paul Gooding, who's an expert in that area. So he will be, in that course, you'll be working with the University Library Special Collections team. They'll be using software called Transcribus, which basically literally transcribes old documents, like manuscripts, etc. We're very fortunate at being such an old institution that we have fantastic special collections, and you'll be working with those directly. In terms of academic librarianship, the degree is designed to allow you to go into any pathway. So obviously the special collections course will directly address special collections and academic librarianship, but the course I teach, Library Information Services Management, will cover management and issues around all sectors. So we'll have guest lecturers from academic libraries coming in to speak to you about challenges in those areas. The other course in semester one, Information and Society, that will be taught by our new colleague who's arriving from the States, Yvonne, and that will be basically focused around things like information literacy, information behaviour, which are core things in academic libraries around teaching students how to, critically analyse information. So it's very well prepared for an academic librarianship career, but it'll prepare you for any library career, in all honesty. So it's really about taking the parts of each course and applying them to the context that you're applying for, but very, very strong on academic librarianship.
Fabulous, thanks, David. And we've got fantastic partnerships. The National Library of Scotland are embedded in our programmes, and we've got really, really good relationships with a variety of different kinds of institutions. We've got some more specific questions related to pursuing a performance librarian career. Now, Emily, you've asked, has anyone from the library programme done this? Our library programme is fresh. It is new this year, but we do have a longer history of training people to work in libraries through our Information Management and Preservation degree, which has trained a number of librarians over the years. Adele, would you like to speak to the diversity of careers that people have gone into?
Yeah, and I can see as well there's a question about how long it takes people to find a job within the sector. The finding a job, it really does just depend on the types of areas that the students or graduates are wanting to go into. So sometimes we have people who, for very good reasons, need to narrow themselves down to a really small geographic area, or for people who, for interest reasons, narrow themselves down to a really small potential job area. They know exactly what they want to do, and they're willing and able to wait for a job like that to come up. But ultimately, we've had students go off into a large number of different roles, from librarianship to digital curation to records information management to compliance to jobs working in archives in museums for museum studies, and it will be, I'd imagine there'll be a really similar profile for the library and information studies roles as well, because we're essentially we're all looking at information. That information might be in different ways, but we're all part of information studies for a reason. And so yes, we have had graduates go off and work in the archival, the records management of different types of performing companies. That might be in the historic archive. Or it might be actually working with the current records, semi-current records. There was one student who really carved out a very specific career plan, which she was really happy with. I'd have found it really unsettling, but she was doing 2 days a week in one Scottish theatre company, and then a day a week in a different performing arts company, and sort of 2 days a week for another one. And she loved that because she just loved the variety of working in different organisations. And none of those organisations were large enough to have a full-time records information manager, archivist, librarian working for them full-time. But a number of students do go off and get those types of roles ultimately.
Yeah, I'm not quite 100% sure what you mean by performance libraries. If you're meaning like special libraries that deal with those kind of collections, there's lots of media libraries within our vicinity. So like there's BBC Scotland, there's STV, which is the commercial station in Scotland. There's also Glasgow School of Art. So there are art-based libraries, but I'm not quite, maybe clarify what you mean by performance libraries, and maybe we can answer that a little bit better.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, like the Scottish Chamber Orchestra recently advertised for a librarian, so I wondered if it was, so performance librarian, as in etc., preparing music for those ensembles. Yeah, so I'm now trying to think about graduates who have gone into roles like that. There was one a couple of years ago.
Conservatoire, probably, Adele, the Royal Conservatoire, I think in Scotland
so
would be obvious.
The Conservatoire's got a really interesting archive, and they've got various people working in librarians for that. You know, the Scotland has got the national, the sort of national institutions, so the national orchestras, the ballet, the opera, and so on. So there are a number of those jobs, but also UK wide and further afield as well, because of the accreditation is really incredibly helpful for those types of roles.
I know the librarian and the conservatoire, so if that was something you wanted, we could look into that for you.
And my favourite job that someone has gone into from the Museum Studies programme is at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and I love to throw that one out there because it's not what I would have thought going from a Museum Studies background into that. So people end up in all kinds of wonderful places. Important questions. How are students going to fund all of this wonderful study? So I know that a lot of our students are working, and more of our students are working with their maximum 20 hours during term time. Emily and Roxanne, I don't know if either of you have worked during term time or you're embedded in the student communities and you know peers who are doing that. How is that experience working out for them? Emily, do you want to share anything?
Yeah, so I would say I had a part-time job for semester 1. So I was working kind of 3 days a week with that. And I found 3 days a week was a little bit too much alongside the course. So I scaled it down to kind of 1 or 2 days in semester 2. And that seemed to work much better. But I know a lot of my peers, they were working, 2 or 3 days a week, part-time jobs, in various different roles. So I think a lot of people do work part-time. And it is manageable, but it's up to you as well, like what your personal circumstances are, what other commitments you might have. If you're just studying and if you don't have, family commitments or anything, you may have more time to have a job, but it just depends. But I found that kind of 1 or 2 days a week maximum seemed to be kind of all I could manage during the term time, just because it's so much work with the course. So just worth bearing in mind that it's... you can work, but just like balance it if you can. Yeah.
And Roxanne, do you have anything to add to that? I know that you were one of our wonderful class reps, so these workload pressures are something we've spoken about a lot.
Yeah, I chose not to work because that was what was best for me. I know a lot of our students don't have that option. But yeah, exactly what Emily said. It's really about what works best for you. And there is a lot of work. So finding that balance is going to be the key.
Yeah. And we've specifically had a question about whether it's possible to get a job in front of house. We've got so many heritage sites in the Central Belt that are accessible to our students, which is really fantastic. I know students who are working for the National Trust right now, for Historic Environment Scotland, for National Museum Scotland, and lots of small organisations as well. So a lot of students do manage to kind of make it all fit together and make their part-time work relate to their degree. That being said, any job is what's going to get the money for you to kind of do your studies, and we can kind of help you out, pointing you to job opportunities within the university as well. We talked at the beginning about those transferable skills. I notice a huge difference between students who have done customer-facing roles and those who are good at public engagement. If you are used to talking to random people as a waiter, as a server in a restaurant, if you're working in a shop, you will bring that kind of public-facing energy that museums and libraries in particular need. So any kind of work that you can always bring those skills. If you think that you need to work more than 2 or 3 days a week, Emily said that she felt 3 was too many, and I probably agree. If you are a home student in particular, please do talk to us about whether part-time study might be a more viable option for you. It's something that we take really seriously, and we do see students burn themselves out by taking on too much, but we really recognise the financial pressures people are under as well. We've got a lot of experience with this, and we've supported a lot of students through our programme. So please do reach out if you think that might apply to yourself. That being said, our international students, we've got a question on this. International students are expected to complete their programme within 1 year. You are expected to be spending the majority of time on your degree, but you can work up to 20 hours a week. We've got some questions around the kinds of assessments that we use. Adele, would you like to give us an example of the different kinds of sector-leading assessment, I would say, that the IMP programme offers?
Yeah, so we take a programmatic view of assessment, and that's each programme. We look across the programme itself, and we try to get a variety, a balance of different assessments across the programme. So on the IMP programme, we'll have the dissertation if you take the masters, so we'll put that to one side. But there are also a huge number of other different assessments. So there's discursive essays, there's reports, there's peer assessments, there is doing recordings of a catalogue search, there's assess presentation. Now trying to work my way through, there's different projects that all have presentations or have reports attached. There's reflective essays and reports. So it's deliberately a huge variety. So we get students who hate one assessment, but actually will feel really at home with a different type of assessment. Emily, to put you on the spot, what was your favourite assessment, but also was the one that you found difficult?
I would say my favourite one was the 2D digitisation project, because we spent a lot of the term doing the theory, and then in the last few weeks we had the opportunity to actually apply the theory and complete a project with the photography department at Archives and Special Collections. So that for me was like the best way of kind of learning throughout the semester and then applying it afterwards. And in terms of least favourite, I would say I'd never really written official kind of reports before, because I'd come from a degree where I just did essays. So I found it quite challenging to change the tone of how I wrote and write quite authoritatively and factually, and not have to be quite like flowery, just be very like to the point. So that was really, really good learning process as well. But at the start, I didn't know how to do it. So it was challenging, but it was good.
But we've got a brilliant student learning and development service who can give advice on different types of academic writing and the way to respond to different sorts of assessment challenges that we give you. And really at the heart of the way that we design assessments for all 3 programmes is the fact that these are professional preparation degrees. So it's really about what skills will you need going into the profession, and how can we help you use this year to actually get there, to develop and hone those skills to become the best professional that you can to allow you to get that job that you really want to get.
Fabulous. So we will be closing our discussion soon, but we've got two more questions I just wanted to cover. One was around placements, whether these placements are always going to be in Glasgow or if they're further afield. As I say, we've got a few different models of placements within the subjects that hopefully will meet you where you need to be. We try and offer as much as we can within Glasgow. Roxanne, I think you did a Glasgow-based placement, yes. So we know that, you know, people only have so many hours in the day to travel to places. We want to keep costs down for students. That money is a key theme in everything we think about. So we do have a wealth of opportunities on our doorstep, and we really use them in Glasgow and the wider central belt of Scotland as well, which includes Edinburgh and Stirling and everywhere in between. But we also really lean into what has become the new normal of hybrid working practices within the world. And so we're able to offer more kind of virtual and hybrid places where students maybe do a couple of days at somewhere further away, but then undertake work remotely. And that means that we've had students doing placements in London, up in the Highlands. We've had a student at the Highland Folk Museum where they spent a little bit of time in Glasgow doing the work, and then some intense time in the Highlands, which is some beautiful opportunity. And I'd love to do that placement myself. So we really take advantage of this flexibility that we are fortunate to now have in our post-pandemic age. And the final question we've got in the chat relates to the Information Studies subject area, which is great. We've never had this. So Information Studies sits within the School of Humanities. So we teach alongside colleagues in archaeology, history, philosophy, Celtic and Gaelic, and classics. And a lot of those subjects offer optional courses that our students can take. So we have students who go off and do courses in classics and history, etc. And I think that's a real richness of our program. So we are very much within the humanities, but we're the kind of the slightly odd one out in our humanities subject areas because of our interest in the intersection between technology and people and collections. And I think that is what makes this really interesting. But David, you have come from a more computer science kind of background. What would you say the advantages of being in a humanities department are?
Yeah, no, you asked such fantastic questions, STD Pet. That's a fantastic question. One of the reasons I moved to Glasgow was for that very reason. I wanted to work in an information studies department that's in a College of Humanities and Arts. And it gives us, because our field is predominantly focused on people and societies. So actually being in an arts faculty or college just gives us that human element, which I think a lot of the other departments might struggle with, in all honesty, because it's more data driven. So we do the data part, but we do it from the point of view of the human being. And I think increasingly information studies and information science needs that human factor, because technology obviously has lots of benefits, but often the human being's missed out. So for me, it's part of our richness that we're actually in a College of Arts and Humanities, because it means we, as Kat said, we can tap into colleagues in philosophy and history, archaeology, but we can also still tap into colleagues in other colleges as well. But we have that human being focus, which I think is fundamental to our profession.
And we've had one cheeky last kind of tagging on question, which will take us to the final one, which is, yes, there are opportunities for us to connect with these wider colleagues within the university, both formally and informally. And your very first opportunity will be at our evening reception in the Hunterian, which is for all humanities PGT students. So we will have representatives from different programs there. You can meet with other students and talk about what they're up to. And then most of you will have the opportunity to take courses in those subjects if you prefer to do an optional course with them rather than ourselves. And again, we can kind of talk you through that during orientation week, and we can recommend some that we think are particularly good or particularly useful for your career pathway. But there is lots of flexibility there. We also have things like research seminars, events that take place across the university. There's too much going on. I'm overwhelmed as a staff member about just how much there is going on. So we'll try and kind of help you navigate through and make those connections where they are meaningful to you. So that is it. That's been a fantastic session. We've had lots and lots of brilliant questions. There probably are many follow-up questions that you can follow up with members of our team. You can get in touch with myself, David, and Adele as program conveners if you have a program-specific question, and you'll be getting a lot of information from our central university services about some of those more specific induction things, getting you all the relevant systems, etc. But I would like to extend a huge thank you to Emily and Roxanne for giving up your time today to come along and share your experiences. You've both been fabulous students. We're still in the midst of dissertations right now, which is a busy time. Roxanne is one of my students, so I know that this is like a big thing for them to be here. So thank you so much for sharing your honest and useful tips for our incoming students. And to my wonderful colleagues, Adele and David, thank you so much for answering our questions. We will see you in September, hopefully. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.